Stanford, right? There were plenty of Stanford people that were there. And the assumption for people, Bill had dropped out of Harvard. There are a bunch of people from Harvard, a bunch of people from Stanford. Because it was in Seattle, there are a bunch of people from UW. But there were like a dozen schools, including UPenn, UCLA, and a couple of other ones where almost all of the recruiting happened. So if you didn't go to those schools, you wouldn't get a shot. And guess what? At a lot of those schools, there was, Stanford was different because there's of a lot of different factors. There was a sizable Black population there. But for a lot of the schools that were on that list, Microsoft never considered candidates because the schools didn't have them in their student bodies, right? So one approach to talent pipeline is helping companies understand you can look here, here, and here for these skill sets, these experiences, et cetera, you know, and we're going to help you find those people that can do those things. And then the question is, because you said sustainable. Okay, so then how do you structure that from a monetization perspective and a relationship development perspective so that you can keep doing it? Like, how do you make sure that the success of actually placing people and helping these companies and helping the community gets shared by the people who are doing the work so they can keep doing the work? The other piece is professional development, right? It's skill development. It's a question of both kind of how do we give people skills and how do we give people the kind of critical thinking and leadership tools so that they know how to deploy those skills in a way that will give them opportunities, right? Now, you mentioned this kind of community college and gig economy. And I would say that as building blocks, I don't see those as essential pieces of your vision. They may be at some point, but I think that what community colleges do for you is that they provide a much more diverse body of students, right? Because they're, just in terms of where community colleges are located geographically, who attends, et cetera, with that, you get another burden, which has to do with kind of badging or credentialing, going back to my point about like where people look for their candidates. But if that's where you want to start, that's reasonable. Gig economy, I will push back only because I think, one, you see that California is really not very pro gig economy stuff. And two, we have to get away from, I've never put it this way, but I'm gonna put it this way now because it just occurred to me and it is apt, and especially given what's been going on this last week, we have to get away from a plantation mentality. And what I mean by that in this specific instance is just that historically, when we chase the union jobs at the auto factory, those jobs end up paying less. When we chase the government jobs, they end up all of a sudden not being held as high in esteem. And so simply saying, well, I'm going to teach people how to use such and such a technology tool, or teach them how to work Uber, or how to blah, 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 blah. If that's the vision, just understand that, like, getting that narrow and that specific without talking about meta skills and giving people a vision about like how do you find economic opportunity and sustain that, and how do we help each other in the community and so on. If you don't have those other pieces, you're going to train a bunch of people and set them up for failure because they're going to move into these spaces and they're not going to get hired, first of all. And if they do try to do this gig stuff, they're not going to make any money at it. So, yes, we want entrepreneurship. Yes, we want some flexibility. Yes, we want people to have skill sets that are kind of in vogue. But I would say that the focus shouldn't necessarily be on the skill set. The focus should be on the outcome. When you started with talent pipeline. So that should be the focus. These other things are means to that. Community college is a means to that. Coding in Python is a means to that. Coding in Ruby is a means to that. Apache or whatever, right? Or teaching marketing or animation. These are all means to that end. But we should kind of define the skill sets that we want to confer based on the skill sets that are currently under our control, right? And the ones that we think have the most long-term value, as opposed to thinking about what's hot and sexy right now.
Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned, really what are the skill sets that are going to be required to be in anybody's talent pipeline, whether or not we have really focused on some very prescriptive ways to take corporations who are saying they can't find the talent and are willing to give these people interviews if we can align their prescriptive requirements to the people that we can find that, you know, have that kind of algorithm to match what, you know, these people are saying that they're looking for. I would like to be focused on that thing first, because outcomes are what I'm looking for. I'm trying to get as many people paid or into the workforce or into the gig economy. And that could be, you know, apprenticeship. It could be some type of way to get them something that's leverageable. So that's what I'm looking for when I say gig economy, is something that is leverageable. And most people,
understood. When I hear gig economy, I'm hearing Uber drivers.
Yeah, right. No, so I'm
that turns me off.
Yeah, right. So I'm only talking about giving people a chance, especially folks now who really need some type of gasoline in their tank. They really do need, you know, I mean, I'm talking about folks who are literally one step away from not only being homeless, but really being disenfranchised and out of hope. And
no, and I understand that for a lot of these folks, we're at a critical stage. I'm just telling you that one, there are roles, for example, in the guilds in Hollywood, right, where folks can go to West LA College or Santa Monica College and learn how to be a grip or an assistant producer, or, you know, whatever, a talent booker, et cetera, an editor, right? And they can find meaningful employment that pays real money, where there's a union, and where they can have over time, right? Versus, you know, trying to kind of set somebody up to where they might be able to get a temp role or to work out a kind of a contract assignment, which gives them a fix, right? They get a 3-month thing where some money is coming in, and then they're out hustling, trying to find the next thing, you know, when they've invested potentially a year or two building up a skill set, right? We have to be thinking beyond, like, I understand that for some people, the need is really acute and you just want to offer those people some help. But again, for those people, like if you're thinking, again, we got to be strategic is all I'm saying. Right. Like for people where like they just need some tactical help right now, that may be beyond the scope of what we can actually do. That might be best left for, you know, some of the COVID legislation going through the state of California and the country. That might be something that is the hallmark of other NGOs that fight homelessness directly. But like for us, if we're going to put a program together, the thing should have like strategic benefit that is clear, sustainable, and where people kind of see the value, and your partners, you know, have long-term relationships both with us and with the people who participate in the program, right? So you got to get away from thinking about the kind of how do we solve somebody's potential eviction in the next 6 weeks, and think about how are we going to put together something that's going to be valuable for the next 16 years.
Right. So here's my holy grail for doing something beyond the talent pipeline, you know, program, the smart pipeline, as it's been put to me, not a dumb pipe. I know that the missing piece for getting people a living wage, and this not only is something, and it's the last link that I put in, it's called the Business Information Worker Certificate. And it is a program certificate that meets with some of the recruiters and some of the hirers who say that some of these students who have the best portfolios and the greatest grades, but they cannot go through a certificate, a test to be able to show that they can use Microsoft Office Suite and do some of the minimum level things that anybody's going to have as their very first job coming out of a 4-year university, let alone a community college. So Ted Milner was the one that told me that, and his focus with the community colleges is that most of the things that he can do to help these people get competitive is to be able to get this certificate so that they can get through a course and be equipped to be able to submit themselves for an opportunity to even get into his employment, which is really temporary in the entertainment industry.
Right, but he and Stacy do the Lord's work for sure.
Yeah, but this is a missing piece that most of the students that come out of USC and UCLA don't even know how to do these kinds of things, to be an administrative assistant. That's the job that they're going to probably get as their first job, but they don't go to USC and UCLA to become anybody's assistant.
and they're not like, and their ceilings are much higher than that. If they go to UCLA or USC, they're not leaving school to be an assistant.
Right.
Right. We can talk about, let's put, hold on, let's put that in a box because Keisha hasn't spoken and we're 20 minutes in.
Okay. So Keisha, I don't know if I've answered any of your questions about how direct I am trying to be.
You've answered some, but to be real transparent with you, at the end of the day, I'm just looking for something very discreet, piloted, that I know we're doing A to B. So for example, you talked about what they're doing with Long Beach City College and all these different things. Well, and if the goal is for the entertainment industry, then yes, that probably works. So I guess I need to understand from you, Kevin, because I also partially heard that you really want to act like a recruiting agency or a work source center, kind of directing people from wherever they are, get a couple of certificates to these jobs, whatever these jobs are. But as you well know, different jobs require different things in different industries. And so I'll tell you, the industries that I've worked at, I can care less if they had a certificate in Microsoft Office, even for my admin staff, knowing once you get in, we give you those things. I'm more interested for some industries, the government, for example, or civil service, I need to make sure they can pass the test to get in. Then I can worry about the rest of that. So if you tell me, Keisha, we're going to go after the entertainment industry, I would say, Kevin, okay, take it down a little further. What specific area that you want to go after? And then if you're telling me you want to help them get into this area, then I'm going to say, can you identify some companies where you already know what it is they want? And if our goal, our job is to bridge the gap between the entry-level requirements and what these people have to get in there, and figure out where those resources are. And then the other thing is, I'm a big believer in not recreating the wheel. If some of these services are offered elsewhere and we can be complementary, great, but figure out what the niche is. So I want to push back to you to what industry are you focusing on?
Okay.
And name the employers there.
Right. So my interest is in trying to serve for the industries who are looking for folks who have a skill set that is kind of a hybrid. It's really creative tech. And those industries are—
Name a creative tech company for me.
Well, all of them. Netflix, Hulu, Warner Brothers, Universal, all now.
What I'm asking you to do, Kevin, let's dig in. Let's dig in. Let's decide, okay, if it's Netflix, what are the jobs? Where are those skill sets obtainable right now? What are the requirements? And then where you want to source those people that you want to push them through a pipeline to get there. So Netflix wants to hire writers, and I'm making it up because I am not that kind of person. They want to hire writers. Okay, these are the requirements to be a writer at Netflix. Okay, where can they get those skills? Let me go to West LA College. You are for X, Y, and Z. Great. Can I get these people in here to be able to push through, to be able to apply for that position there? And if you really want to be cute about it, then you talk to Netflix and say, hey, these are your requirements. If I can source these folks, can you at least put them on that first point to interview?
Right. So I just put the last insert was where I believe we could play a role in helping students understand that we're underrepresented in this new emerging growing area of creative tech. And the organization that has just created diversity initiative is called the Association of Software Foundation. So every single major entertainment industry is a part of this organization, and they've created this diversity program. And to my understanding, they're trying to help people who are underrepresented understand where the growth opportunities are and where things are going for some of these major entertainment industries. And if I was to focus on anything, is to try and see if I can narrow down what does diversity and inclusion mean for them? Because for them, it's women, it's people who are underrepresented, who may be Asian or Indian or whatever. I'm trying to look for Black
What are you
folks.
going to offer them, Kevin?
Well, I'm going to offer them, well, one, I want to offer them a database of people that have been.
And what's the guarantee they're going to use the database? And I'm pushing you on purpose.
Yeah, well, I don't know that there's anything more, as you said, that a lot of these organizations say they can't find people. So I want to make sure that they're challenged.
Think about that, Kevin. No, you're going to go in there and say, I see you have this diversity initiative. Mm-hmm. I would like to work with you with these specific companies. This is what I can guarantee you. If you can commit to me, this group of people will get an interview after they've met these qualifications.
Right. So that is my challenge to them, is to say that I have people, if you tell me what are the requirements, what are the, types of curriculum should they be having, with certifications, if there's portfolio work, if you give me some prescriptive information, I want to offer up that I have a talent base that meets your prescriptive needs of what a candidate could be to be processed through your diversity initiative. Now, they've already said that they want to do a webinar. And the webinar and all of the meetings we have, their next one's on the 13th. We have a monthly webinar. So they want to do a webinar, and the webinar is going to be to a lot of organizations who are well-heeled, to community, there's no community colleges, there's no K through 12. They're all people that are not in my talent pipeline focus. So there's a need to try to get the pipeline, the talent pipeline program that I've envisioned, to align it to organizations who are saying they're looking to do webinars to these people about what even is open source. So if you talk to people about open source in the diversity areas that I'm looking at, they're like, well, what does that mean? And there's a language.
So I want to stop you there, Kevin. Number one, because I'm gonna have to jump in a couple minutes. But again, you're digging down into the weeds. Let me say this about, so just so you know, when I worked at Microsoft, I was a recruiter. So I'm also a retired, hiring agent. And I will say that, again, there's a question about, are you trying to develop talent? And if you are, what are you doing that academic institutions aren't already doing? Or are you trying to place talent? In which case, what is your special power? This is not really about using other organizations' credentialing systems or expectations, because part of this, as we know, especially when we talk about Black people, is that, we can be qualified in terms of knowing the thing that people say you need to know. We can check a box and still not be considered. So this is where Keisha's trying to get your attention regarding what commitments are you trying to solicit in order to get people to firmly commit to seriously consider the pool of talent that you have access to, right? I would say, in addition to that, what are you prepared to do to essentially build a platform or a program so that you can actually properly, have a proper taxonomy of the talent you do have access to, right? You got to be able to speak to, like, I've got people who, can do front-end web development. I've got other people who can do full stack software development. I have other people who are product designers and product managers. I have other people who are statisticians and data analysts. I have other people who are general managers or whatever it is, marketers, right? So understanding kind of like, well, what can you do so that you can actually be a good steward of the folks who should be getting placed, right? And this idea of doing webinars and kind of program management, like hosting events and stuff like that, that is one potential approach to try to connect employers to potential employees. My warning to you is that connection is just pro forma unless the employer believes that the pool is actually going to yield something. There were times when we would, at Microsoft, we would go to certain events and put up a booth and do our thing, when I knew for sure that Microsoft would never consider any of the people coming out of that. I would take back hundreds, sometimes thousands of resumes that would essentially just get loaded into a database and ignored, right? They would never consider, nobody really did a review, there's nothing. So you can do that, and if the idea is to kind of enrich, to kind of use that as a way to lever up. Somebody says, well, we'll give you $100,000 to put together a series of webinars. You say, well, look, it takes me 10 grand to do the webinars. I'm going to take the 90 grand and I'm going to do this other thing that's of more value. That's completely reasonable. But you have to be thinking beyond the tactical if you're actually talking about one, developing a skill set in a community, or two, placing talented people in organizations at scale. If you're just talking about a one-off, or like placing a dozen people,
so
whatever.
let me ask you a question, because I know you're running short on time. I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to develop and place, so that there is an articulation between the two of them, and where I source the talent, where I find the mentors who are going to be from the employment resource groups from these corporations, so that we're not just getting lip service from people who are trying to do great programs, but we're actually finding people who are currently employed in those corporations, who can talk about the secret sauces of those corporations and what they're looking for.
So they can talk about it, but they're not the hiring managers.
They're not hiring.
They're not going to be the ones.
Well, see, no one's going to guarantee anybody being hired through a program.
I'm not so sure about that. Look at what Howard's doing with Google. Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like, just recognize that, like, the companies are doing some things, and we have to figure out what we can do that's differentiated. And going back to Keisha's original desire, like, we pick a lane for now to do a concrete thing that we can pilot and have some success with. And if it's about, for example, developing a certain skill set, I'm cool with that. But then let's be realistic about what our outcomes are going to be, the number of students we're trying to reach, and what we think, actually what success looks like. What are the victory conditions?
Right.
If we're going to try to teach people something, what at a minimum do they need to demonstrate that they learned? Right. And what are we going to do with them once they've learned it?
I agree.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So here's the last thing I want to mention because of timing. I have talked to Apple about one specific curriculum, and it's a guide resource for K through 12 and higher education that I believe is something I want to tackle. I talked to an Apple Distinguished Educator Executive today about that curriculum. It's really something that, again, if we have a next meeting, I want to rally around what this could become as the very first thing that I could offer as you guys thinking of a pilot that's not a one-off, that can continue to discuss how students are brought into the development phase so that they can then start to carry the water for this whole program. Because I don't know that I'm going to find a Google willing to hire people from Howard, but I think I can float all boats in an area where I can find the talent being developed, so that irrespective of what commitment somebody make, then the talent then will lead, and they will become the reason why people take some real interest in this pool of talent, as opposed to trying to broker a deal. Because I don't know that I can do any of that work. I think those are relationships.
So let me just jump in real quick, because I really do want to hear from Keisha. And I also think that there are some, given what you just said, I think there's some ideas we can start to pursue. Remember, what you have at your disposal is not just, a curriculum sitting around from some organization. You have humans, and most of the humans that you've reached out to and connected with are ballers. So understand that if you come out and say, okay, this is the Delta Noir Foundation, right? We're just trying to change things for Black people. So Delta Noir. And people say, well, who the hell is Delta Noir? And you say, well, let me show you who my advisors are. Marcelino Ford Levine, Keisha Washington, Jay Tucker, Michelle Turner, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden people are like, well, damn, what do y'all do? Well, what we do is we develop talent in these areas. Now, some people may say, well, tell me how you do it. But in a lot of cases, they're going to say, well, damn, if you got all those folks, if you got Ted Milner and you got such and such and such, and you have a relationship with Heartbeat Studio and you have, right? Like at a certain point, they're going to be like, okay, so how can we help? They're going to believe that you did your homework. And then it's up to you to say, well, this is what we want. This is what we want to do. And this is what we need from you. And either they poop or they get off the pot. Mm-hmm. Right? So don't be thinking small and tactical that you have to like run around behind somebody else's vision for some set of skills or a curriculum or whatever that they've already put into their little program or whatever. No, this is not vocational. We're not sitting here trying to carry water for Apple or for anybody else. If you want to bring in this group of people, it's because we're saying that we're committed to actually developing talent in our community, and we're willing to put the time in and to put, you know, some sweat equity into having an initiative that has enough gravitational pull to where the things that we say that we're going to do, we're going to be able to do them. So then if we start with the premise that what you really want is a talent pipeline, then let's peel off either the placement or the development. It sounds like the development, and then figure out what the skill set is that we want to develop, and then look and see what we have within our connections so that we can deliver that. And then we need to be the ones to promote it, and we'll mess with the folks who mess with us. If it turns out that for whatever reason, Google doesn't care, but Amazon does, great, right? We need 15 yeses, because at first we're going to have how many students? 3? 15? Yeah. Like, right. It's not going to be something where you need 70 Fortune 500 companies to be on board. You'll probably need 1. So if 20 say no and 1 says yes, you're
will just need 1.
Right.
Right. So I know we
need 1 for proof of concept.
So Keisha, what I'd like you to consider, I've never talked to you about it, but Jay knows about this organization. Apple has a division called Apple Distinguished Educators. And it's a very exclusive group of educators who have to submit themselves for qualification to become Apple Distinguished Educators. They are looking for people in public schools, inner cities, to convert into these supercharged people who take Apple's resources, whether it's their software, or actually their hardware and some software, to create
Apple products and product placement.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. So I mean, no doubt about it. It's an Apple branded initiative. So no doubt about it. But if you look at the second to the last thing, it's the Apple social racial justice curriculum. I think it's so appropriate. It's so right on for right now, that I believe that it's something that I can rally around, and all these other things we've talked about in terms of history and the Venn diagram, they all allow some part of us to fit inside of what they're doing.
So do you know who Lisa Jackson is?
Yes. I mean, she came from Obama's administration. What Department of Energy?
She was the EPA, and we have mutual friends in common.
So they're doing this so privately. You can't find the links that I've just given you, except for the one about the $100 million initiative. You can't find this link anywhere. So Apple, I had a discussion today with Apple about their distinguished educators, especially in higher education, being able to share with Dakar a way to promote some of the discussions about how they're using this social justice guideline and the guardrails to help students produce content that fit inside of the outcomes for challenge-based learning. So
you want to do what with this?
I want to make sure that everybody's able to understand what challenge-based learning is from Apple's perspective. And then
you want to educate them on.
I want to educate them on how challenge-based learning can help students get better at producing product.
And who's going to pay you for doing that?
No, Apple's
right, because that's strategic sales is what you're talking about.
Yes.
You're not talking about community development.
Right. So I have a chance to submit a proposal to Apple to help them grow their Apple Distinguished Educators. So I'm really recruiting for people to say, hey, do I want to submit myself as an Apple Distinguished Educator? So literally, I am a broker, I'm a recruiter for bringing more people into focus on what Apple is doing right or wrong. Now, if they're not doing anything, then it's just a marketing contract.
So this is you as a private business and not as a foundation.
Well, it would probably be as a nonprofit. I mean, obviously, most of the organizations that do this kind of work are looking for nonprofits as partners. So and here's the bulletin. I am now a full-fledged public foundation. So when I've been looking for
501c3.
501c3, yes. So I was disqualified from AT&T grant last year because I was not a public charity. I was a private trust. I am now public. So I can go after my own money again. And I now have enough money that on my books to show my operating budget that I've raised more money and produced more outcomes than just about anybody I know. A lot of people donated a lot of money and raised a lot of money, but what are their outcomes? I've produced film projects under my 501c3. I've produced media projects, and I have projects that now I can stand up and say, this is what we're going to use as our operating budget. So now I'm no longer out there trying to figure out how to find a partner, a 501c3 to partner this stuff. So
okay, here's our challenge, Kevin. We're running out of time, and you've done what you do, and that's present a lot of ideas. I suggest for the next meeting, let's limit it to one thing, whatever it is you want to push forward, and proceed with that. But let's commit in the future to sticking to one idea and seeing it through so that we're able to fully discuss it. And you decide, because you keep convening us. Tell us which one you want to discuss.
Right. So I want to use Black History Month. I want to use the month of February, which is coming up in 2 weeks.
Which
right?
we didn't even talk about.
Right. No, I know, but I wanted, this was an introductory meeting. This is the first time you guys have ever seen each other in the same space. So the reason I wanted this was introductory. First and foremost, just so that you guys knew that you may be the only people that I can get a tough session to figure out how to stay, you know, or how to get better at reining in anybody who's part of the coalition of the willing.
So what I would say about that, and I really do need to jump, is that it starts with, you know, in terms of kind of lining everybody else up, you got to be crystal clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And I would say that again, you've been working so hard on very specific things that you are having a very hard time pulling out of the details of a particular opportunity, a particular relationship, a particular technology, and talking about what should we be lining up to achieve a specific outcome. So we've talked about Black History Month as a time when we could do a thing. The question is, what is the thing? And the reality is that thing is probably going to have very little to do with Apple. It's going to have very little to do with the Academy of Software, right? It's going to have very little to do with these other whatever, right? So what does it have to do with? Right. And that's where, again, you've got some serious firepower at your disposal to make something happen.
Right.
But the question is, what is the something and who benefits from the something?
It's a kickoff for a month-long attempt to try and create something almost 11 months from now. So monthly, I want to build.
Now we're back to the December 6th thing.
Yes, I want to create milestones for getting to December 6th. Even if it's just, again, announcing the op-ed or the letter or something that again, creates some awareness and some attempt to become a promoter or a publisher of
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you that that's a fourth thing now.
Yeah,
right.
But it's the end state.
Wait, time out. That's a fourth thing. And it's a fourth thing that doesn't have anything to do with talent development. Okay, just so that we're clear.
Yeah.
And this is what we're talking about. This is what you're hearing Keisha saying, that we need to choose a lane, flesh that out, and work that. When we asked you at the beginning, what's the most important thing? You said talent development. Now, when we talk about your first opportunity to launch a pilot, you're talking about December 6th. Do you see how that doesn't work?
Well, it does for me.
Is not, no. That's what I'm saying. It may work for you, but the circuit is not closing if you can't see that that doesn't work for others.
Okay. All right. That's understandable. So I have to then, I write it out, I blog it out, but I don't get any response from it. So I will continue to try and connect.
No, Kevin, I don't want you in your feelings. Listen to what I'm telling you. You said you have a goal. You said that your priority is talent development. If that is the case, then your first joint out the box needs to be related to talent development. And if you want to do it in February, that is fine. If you want to wait till June, that is fine. But whatever it is, if talent development is the most important thing, December 6th goes to the side. That's a side hustle that you work on in the margins. And it's not to say you can't do it, shouldn't do it, and that we won't help on that too. But if we just spent 30 minutes talking about talent development because that's the most important thing, then for sure, the first program that we run together that we pilot is going to be related to talent development. And it's not going to be chasing behind Apple or anybody else with their, curricular, whatever. It's going to be about us articulating a vision for what skills are actually going to have value long-term in our community, and how we connect the dots between these folks who are in those communities and not getting served, and actually connecting them to whatever it is, education, resources, opportunities, mentors, so that they can get those skills and move on.
Okay, great.
Right?
All right, so
that's what we're doing.
All right, so the next meeting, if you can, Jay, can you help to describe why you developed or why you wrote the manifesto called the Digital Pathway Initiative? Because that's what
Keisha's heard me say that. Keisha's heard me say that already. We don't need to go back through that.
Well, but that's the plan. That's the playbook.
No, it's not. It's a vision. It's not a playbook. It's a vision, right? So now we're trying to get a playbook. That's exactly the point. Now is the playbook time. So if we got vision, which is we connect these resources together to make a positive change. Now we have what seems to be an overarching goal, which is talent development. Then we need a strategy. So what program are we going to launch to get us talent development in line with the vision?
Right.
We don't need to restate the vision. We don't need to waste time on that. And we don't need to go through a catalog of like all the other relationships, technologies, et cetera, that are available.
But in the original Digital Pathway Initiative that I've never shared with Keisha, there were programs. There was like the Tuskegee Airmen Film Contest Project. There were other things that were available for us to help.
Oh, you're talking about
what is your
ideas.
program?
Yeah, well, in the Digital Pathway Initiative, there were challenges, there were competitions to help develop the talent that we were looking to engage. And the outcomes that
is true. Yes.
The outcomes are what we're going to use to try and develop the talent, and then get these people put into a talent database so that we can say that these are people that have been coached up and are available for people who are hirers or recruiters to take a look at. And that's what
I will share, if you don't have the deck handy, I will share.
I've never shared it with Keisha. I've never shared it with anybody. Because, yeah, because that was your joint, Jay. And I never could.
Yes,
I never could articulate it like you did. I've still never put it in there.
So the quick and dirty, because I'm now 20 minutes late for a meeting. The quick and dirty, Keisha, is that from where I sit, what Kevin was describing in terms of opportunities and where the community is and what we can do can be remedied in part by experiential learning opportunities. So whether we're talking about pitch fests, content creation competitions, where we give people, all the same set of media assets and tell them, run, you got a weekend, make something cool out of it, right?
What happens at the back end?
Back end is that the winners get, prizes, funding, and potentially jobs. Right? Because you're going to take that experience, you're going to go out and shop it around and find a sponsor company or companies. And then from that, that's what's going to both create the incentives for the kids to participate.
That's precisely what I've been trying to figure out, how to have. Jay, you've been the author of this thing. I only looked at it as a marketing tool, but I didn't have the soul of it available for me to share with anybody quite the way that you just did right now. So for the very first time, this is the first time you've ever talked to anybody.
It's not the first time I've ever talked to anybody about this.
About that document, though. It's okay. About that document. You've talked to General Bray and some other people.
But I've talked about us doing experiential learning stuff. And maybe I've just taken it for granted that people understand what I mean. So with our next
meeting, can we talk about the components inside of DPI that are challenge-based learning, competitions, hacks, or whatever, so that the talent can then be, again, given opportunity?
I would say, I think we just talked about it.
Okay.
We need to come up with what we want to do.
Specific, please. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I have a very specific challenge competition that I want to put out there for students, community college, or anybody else who wants to team up to produce something for February, a showcase for February.
So you're never going to, nobody's going to, you mean to kick it off in February and then have to submit in June?
Yeah, because they're not, yeah.
Well, again, and it is an open letter. If you can imagine just an open letter being something that people could sign on to and say, now what am I going to do with this open letter to take on my role or my part to see it, to see it in my vision developed as something that I can contribute to. So that's what my last blog that I haven't shared with anybody, I'll send it to you, is my wish to see if students, if I do an open letter to students, how many of them are going to gravitate towards it and do something with it.
I would just say with something like this, of this scope, the best you can hope for in February is to kick it off, is to announce it.
Yes, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It just
with the idea that with the idea that folks don't actually participate in any activities, at least, you know, until March, April, and that anything that they're going to submit is going to have to be submitted after that. You have to kind of back out what's a reasonable amount of time to do the thing that you want them to do. Because in addition to you announcing it to the students, if it's actually going to work, you're going to have to get buy-in from some companies. And that takes time as well. So you got to structure the competition, and you got to get buy-in from other stakeholders before you can actually announce it to the students. And we're already at the 8th of January. Right. So I would say that it's not to say that it can't be done. It can be done. But, you know, the next conversation that we have, if that's the avenue you want to take and talk about an experiential learning, opportunity, we can talk about that, but let's only talk about that. Let's figure out what that would,
that's only, I want, and again, Keisha gave me the idea, is how to get people to be signatories or signatures to an open letter, to have some consensus agreement on what can we.
But you're not combining that, are you?
No, this is a completely different thing for students to try to figure out what's going on in their minds so that they can sign on to something. And then it can become a learning tool to figure out what we can do to help them develop.
And who's going to subsidize that?
I guess I'm going to have to do it if I don't find anybody in the next 10 days.
But Kevin, that's not it. That's not it. I don't mind an experiential learning thing, and it's creating marketing or branding material, but I want to know that you're creating it for a specific entity who's going to turn around and say, I'm going to give you a $5,000 or $10,000 prize to the winner, or the winner can get an internship with my company this summer because they've learned how to do this. And that's something that I can work with.
I know Jay's got to go.
The signatory part for the December 6th letter is different.
Okay,
that's
yes,
totally
100%.
different. That's
it's got to be completely, those
two
things need a thick wall between them.
Right, so I've been trying to figure out if the community colleges, who are the only ones I know have a little money, who could dip into this thing and say, hey, this could be a learning.
You want private sector for this experiential thing.
Okay, well, I'm looking.
You want people with money.
I don't know. Right. I don't know who's out there, but I'll look everywhere.
Kevin, go back to your
Apple.
Or go back to the entertainment companies or anyone else who are looking to do things.
owns Warner Media. Like, why wouldn't, I mean, of course. So anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna do what I can to rally around something experiential for February for students to connect to.
Right. And I would say again, has to be 100% separate from the December 6th initiative. 100, you got to stop conflating them. If you will lose everybody if you try to combine those two things. They are so different, it's ridiculous. And I would say that there's room to talk about the talent pipeline as part of a conversation that you have throughout Black History Month that includes a conversation about economic empowerment. That like you can have this larger conversation about, well, you know, what is the Black experience, the Black community, and what we need, and say, well, here's one thing we need, and this is what we're doing. Here's another thing we need, and this is what we're doing. But you cannot go out and pitch those two things as two things that are together. You cannot try to articulate them as two parts of one whole. You cannot try to like get students engaged in both things simultaneously. No, no, no. If you're going to do something where it's all about them creating something new, you know, in terms of producing media of some sort, even if it's just a post-production activity, right? You're just giving them all the assets and literally they're just editing. Whatever that experience is, it has got to be completely separate from this idea of December 6th, which is a completely different lane around.
I will not mention December 6th again. I'm only looking for something like the Apple Conversation Discussion Guide.
You can mention it. You can mention it often. Just do not conflate it.
But I'm looking at you guys giving me guidance. So if you're saying do not conflate, I won't mention it.
That just means don't mention it in this context.
I'm going to focus on what Apple's given me as a potential guide. Whether or not I use Apple, they've given me a guide to have a discussion. to create some way for student activation and student participation. So
I
just
would
look
say
at
that you
just look at look at their guide. So take Apple out.
We'll check out the resources. I'm just going to remind you that you have a woman sitting here associated with LA's best incubator, and a dude who not only runs the center but happens to have a master's degree in education in addition to an MBA. So I don't think either of us really need to see what Apple's got to write for us to come up with some decent ideas. I will check it out.
Yeah.
Right. But just understand.
I've accomplished a lot. So let me cut you guys right now. Please look at this and tell me whether or not I'm off task. Just look at their guide and see if we can extract something from it, from what they're talking about that's appropriate for right now with students involved. Because that's really what I saw. What I saw was what I'd like to be able to give some students as a challenge-based learning. And their definition of it is good.
So out of love for you, just so you understand, because I have a 330 now and I had a 3.
Oh my God.
So I've basically blown off somebody else, right? I really need you to get strategic about this and make this a priority. If you want us to kind of invest our time and energy in it, I need you to understand that there has to be a concrete strategy and outcome and program associated with this. Once we have decided what that is, getting the resources and making it happen may be tricky, but it's going to be the kind of tricky as in amount of work. If we get this beginning piece, the what are we actually doing wrong, nothing else will work. Nothing else will work.
That's fair.
Right?
It's fair.
So again,
so look at the guide, and then I'm going to put together a one sheet on what could become a proposal for some sponsor.
Don't worry about time out. Don't worry about again. Stay away from tactics right now. I can't tell you that enough.
Okay. All right. Well,
focus on what do you want as the outcome, and what are the most likely programs that get you there. The next time we talk, we can go through them. If you feel like it's a creative challenge or a product challenge or a hackathon or whatever, we can go through each of those and figure out whether or not they're viable, who the stakeholders are, what's the benefit, and then make a decision. After we've decided what we think the thing is, then we can talk about proposals and potential stakeholders and all that other stuff. We are so far from that right now. You don't have to do any of that right now. What you need to do is pick a lane. That's what you need to do right now. Pick a lane.
And I've got one again with the time we have left remaining. I'm going to run with.
I don't have time remaining.
Right.
We have no time left, Kevin. He's got to go.
Okay, I got to go. All right. So hey,
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
So send us a text. We'll look at another date.
Okay.
You got it. Thank you guys.
All right.
Love.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.